Hello, family. I hope all is well. I hope there is a lot of positivity starting off in your life for 2026. And I'm sending you lots of love. Mwah. Never can get enough of love. All right, we're going to look into some clips. And thank you all so much for your likes, your shares, your comments. Even if you disagree, they're welcome. All right, family. We're finna listen to Ann Coulter. Now, this was a woman that used to be a racist. I mean, she didn't bite her tongue. She was a Karen, but listen to her now. I guess Aunt JJ got together, but check out what she's saying about black people now. Or they know the wrath of God is coming down on them. These white people know judgment is on them, and they like, we gonna have to we Pharaoh, and we gonna have to let God's people go, and we gonna come out with great abundance. Genesis 15:13-14. But here we go.
The reason people are concerned about the words they use, the reason Americans care about civil rights, the reason we are sensitive to racism is for one issue and one issue only, and that is how black Americans were treated in this country. It is because of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. Those do not compare. Irish, the new groups, they always get a little bad treatment. Do not compare that to how blacks are treated in this country. You don't get to piggyback on the black experience in America. You do not get to do that just because you are a woman, an immigrant, gay, Hispanic. No, the rest of you can go F yourselves. No, this is for black Americans. We seem to have forgotten them. It's not a rainbow coalition. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortion. That's what civil rights has become for much of the left. Wait, can I just say, what have we done to the immigrants? We owe black people something. We have a legacy of slavery. Immigrants haven't even been in this country.
Now, when they get around it.
This is the title, family. Every black person gets $1 million. I think we deserve more. And we deserve 40 acres. All right. Okay, family. Here's why we deserve reparations, and here's some of our struggles.
They made decisions about which communities would stay and which would go. And somehow, they kept picking the same kind of land, black land. After slavery ended in 1865, formerly enslaved people faced an impossible situation. They had no money, no property, no legal protections worth mentioning, but they had one thing that couldn't be taken away: the determination to own something. They scraped together whatever coins they could earn. They bought land that nobody else wanted, parcels in swamps and flood zones and rocky hillsides, land that was cheap because white people had deemed it worthless. They built their own towns in these places. They wanted distance from white communities where violence could erupt at any moment. They wanted safety for their children. Most of all, they wanted to own something that could never be taken from them, or so they believed. These settlements became known as freedom colonies. By 1910, there were hundreds of them scattered across the South and Midwest. Black people owned property with legal deeds bearing their names. They operated general stores and blacksmith shops. They built churches with their own hands, hauling timber and mixing mortar. They established schools where their children learned reading and arithmetic. They created cemeteries on hillsides where they buried their parents and grandparents with dignity. They passed wealth down to the next generation, something that had been impossible just decades before. Then the dam project started, and these towns started disappearing beneath rising water. The first example sits at the bottom of one of Georgia's most popular lakes. In 1912, a white mob descended on Oscarville, Georgia, a town in Forsyth County. False accusations had been made against black residents, the kind of accusations that required no evidence and allowed no defense. What followed was calculated terror. Over 1,000 black people were driven out or killed in a matter of days. Homes were burned to their foundations. Property was stolen or destroyed. The mob made sure no black person remained in Forsyth County. Not one. For decades, the ruins of Oscarville sat empty, but that was not the end of the town's story. In 1956, the federal government built Buford Dam on the Chattahoochee River. They needed land to flood for the reservoir. They chose the area where Oscarville had stood 44 years earlier. They created Lake Lanier, named after a Confederate poet. The water rose and covered what remained of the black town that had been violently destroyed. Today, Lake Lanier is one of Georgia's premier recreational destinations. Over 10 million people visit each.
So white people, Latin and Haitian, and all y'all that try to put us down and say we don't own nothing, this is why. They was always sabotaging my ancestors.
Here, families rent houseboats and spend weekends on the water. Teenagers learn to water ski. Children build sandcastles on the beaches. Jet skis leave white trails across the surface on sunny afternoons. The lake generates millions of dollars in tourism revenue. Most visitors have no idea what lies beneath their feet when they wade into the water. Lake Lanier has another distinction that locals whisper about but rarely discuss publicly. Since it opened in 1957, over 700 people have died there. Drownings in calm water on clear days. Boat accidents that defy logical explanation. Bodies that disappear and are never recovered,
Our
even after extensive
ancestors.
searches. Some people say the lake is cursed, that the spirits of Oscarville's victims drag the living down into the depths. Others say it's just a dangerous body of water with hidden debris and unpredictable currents
Called sowing and
caused by
reaping.
the submerged structures of the old town. Either way, the history stays buried. There are no historical markers explaining what happened in 1912 or 1956. There are no memorials to the families who were driven out or drowned twice. The story remains underwater, known only to those who seek it out. The pattern established at Lake Lanier repeated itself across the South. In Alabama, 2 black towns disappeared beneath the same reservoir. Coalinga was founded in 1890 by John Benson, who had been born into slavery in South Carolina. After emancipation, he worked whatever jobs he could find and saved every penny. He eventually bought land near Coalinga Creek in Elmore County, Alabama. The land was affordable because white people didn't want it. The area was swampy and prone to flooding, but it was.
I don't see no Latinos in these pictures. I don't see nothing but foundation of black Americans, black American Indians, and the black Israelites. No Haitians, no Mexicans. So quit saying that we all was enslaved and we all built America. No, you did not. Don't you see those buildings there? And none of y'all were here. So it was buildings. We've been building.
Other black families joined Benson over the years. They fished the creek for bass and catfish. They farmed corn and vegetables on the patches of land that weren't underwater half the year. They built simple wooden homes and a small church with a tin roof. Children were born there and learned to swim in the creek. Old people died there and were buried in a cemetery on a small rise that stayed dry even during heavy rains. It wasn't much, but it was home. It was theirs. In 1926, Alabama Power Company finished construction on Martin Dam, creating one of the largest reservoirs in the state. The water began to rise slowly at first, then faster. 40,000 acres flooded over the course of several months.
Of black people
Coalinga went
land.
under. Hundreds of families were displaced
Foundation
with
of
little
black
notice and less
Americans. Look at all
compensation.
of it.
The company had decided their land was needed for the greater good, for progress, for electricity that would power
people
Birmingham's
always
growing
dress
industries.
Like we do
Just
now.
miles
That's why I
away
tell you,
from
you
where
can tell a
Coalinga
foundation
drowned
black
stood
American and a
Susanna,
black
a
American
much
Indian
larger and more
and the
established
Israelite.
settlement.
We
By the
always
early
dress.
1900s, more than 900 people lived there. This was not a struggling village of sharecroppers barely getting by. Susanna had real infrastructure
They
and a
kept
functioning economy.
sabotaging us.
It had a post office, which meant the federal government officially recognized it as a legitimate town. Mail was delivered there.
So family, if you like my video, like it, share it if you agree, and thank you so much. Love y'all. Bye.